Hello again, it's time for our weekly review, and this week we're going to talk about, we're going to use Karen as an example, a different Karen to last time. Karen enjoys bikepacking, not racing, but going on adventures, and she goes on some quite exciting adventures. So last year she cycled in Scandinavia, and this year she's planning to do a tour in Kyrgyzstan. So her goals for this year are 400 miles in 4 days in the spring, all preparation for her August trip to Kyrgyzstan. And what she also wants to do is improve her average speed. So to improve her average speed, then she's working quite hard on the interval training sessions as well. She uses heart rate for training, doesn't have a power meter, so which works really well. And I first met Karen in 2018, in the summer of 2018. Her and her partner Pete came by our place in Castell in the Trench Pyrenees, and we had a bit of a consultation session, and they stayed for a meal, and stayed overnight actually. So we got to know them then, and we've stayed in touch. Karen came on our first virtual training camp, which worked out pretty well, and now she's part of the group plan. And Pete's actually part of the running group plan, working with Claire. So we'll start by seeing how Karen's got on against the plan, and a couple of things. Karen's retired, so she can train whenever she wants. Obviously she's got commitments, but she's a bit more flexible than people who work every day. And also Karen trains with heart rate, so she uses perceived exertion for shorter interval sessions because heart rate doesn't work very well, and uses heart rate for endurance riding, tempo rides and longer interval sessions where heart rate is very effective. And she uses heart rate to look at her overall training stress score. You can see here that Karen's actually does quite a lot of training volume. 60-70 chronic training load is quite high, but she handles it very effectively. So we'll look at the last 2 weeks, because we had a 2-week block of training, and you can see that Karen went for a run. She moves things around to suit herself, but she understands the principles that she should do harder work when she's properly recovered, so she makes sure she has an easier day before a hard session, and that she recovers after the hard sessions. So you can see here that even though it's 50 minutes, it's fairly low intensity, 35 TSS, and then she does the interval session here, which is the same as the plan, as an easy ride. She skipped the tempo ride, but went for a run. We exchanged a few emails to discuss that and decided that that was the best option. Storm Dennis caused disruption all over the UK, and it certainly was a lot safer to go out and running than cycling. And then on Sunday she did the interval session that was planned for the next week, but that was to give herself a bit of a taper into the event that she's got planned tomorrow. It's Friday today here. And then if you look at this week, it's quite a long easy ride on Monday, which was equivalent to the Sunday ride. More of a recovery day on Tuesday, run Wednesday, the tempo session as planned yesterday, and then she's going to rest, and then she's got the event coming up. So this is going to be quite a big week for her. 7 hours, 6.5 hours she's estimating the 50-mile gravel race is going to take her, and that'll give her quite a lot of fatigue into the following week. And what we would expect to do is make next week an easy week, which is planned as part of the group plan anyway, so it works perfectly for her. So I'll close that and we can have a look at what she's done. We can see that she's obviously been working quite hard, because she's got a highest heart rate for this year, 5 seconds. So we can look at data here. Because the session was planned in RPE, you don't get the blue bars, so it makes it more difficult to compare the interval sessions. I think Karen's got a workaround. I think what she does is she switches it to be planned for heart rate, and then she can get the bars to refer to. That gives her an idea of how things have gone. But what we can do is look at the heart rate zones to see how it went. And although it's very difficult to see, you can see that all the intervals went into zone 4, and most of them went up into zone 5, which is the target zone. Heart rate's not the best way to plan or execute short intervals, because heart rate takes time to rise. Your heart rate doesn't increase immediately like your pace or your power might do. as a consequence it's hard to gauge your level of effort as it's increasing right up to the end of the interval. So you can see the heart rate starts to rise when she starts the interval, and then it's just continually going up. So you couldn't really aim to stay at a certain heart rate, you just have to do them as hard as you can. So this is why we use perceived exertion, and for short intervals like a minute, then you're just working as hard as you can to get the same average pace for each interval, and perceived exertion works pretty well. She went for a long ride the day after, so tired legs, working out the tired legs probably. A run, as we mentioned, that was because of the storm, and then did the interval session on the weekend on Sunday, so we can have a quick look at that, and that's quite nice to see. And if we look at the zones, she should be spending time around a threshold, around a threshold heart rate, which she is, which shows that she's done that session perfectly. So one thing further to note, if you're looking at the training stress scores, the heart rate TSS for short interval session isn't a very good measure, but there isn't much else you can use, so it's all we have. You can see why, because if you look at the time in zones, Karen actually spent, if she'd been using a power meter, then she would have been probably spent most of the time in zone 5, or certainly so that she would have done 16 by 1 minute in zone 5, which would have been 16 minutes in zone 5, whereas with heart rate, because of the lag, she's only recorded 4 minutes in zone 5 and 14 minutes in zone 4, so you can see that skews the TSS a little bit easier. Then if you look at this week, easier start to the week, which is great, gives her a bit of a taper into the event, and then this tempo ride, which she did on a mountain bike, so it isn't structured. If we analyse that, we can see that, well, if we put the zones on, if you're doing a tempo ride, it doesn't have to be structured. The fact is how much time you spent in that zone, so you're just trying to spend as much time in your zone 3, and don't go harder. There's no point trying to do it above your zone 3, you'll just make yourself tired, you'll do lots more damage to your body, which means you'll be more tired and unable to do the higher intensity sessions, so you'll end up achieving some mediocre level of fitness rather than the big gains that you want to make from your high intensity training sessions. So if we look here, we can see that Karen's actually spent a lot of her time in training zone 2, so it's probably not really achieved the target of being a tempo session. We can look at the distribution of time in zone here, and here heart rate is relevant because we're looking for a tempo. Right? The delay in the heart rate rising isn't relevant, and you can see that she's spent 24 minutes in the tempo zone, no time above the zone. So then the goal was 50 minutes in tempo. So this really hasn't achieved the goal of the session. However, because she's got an event coming up, that's perfectly reasonable, and I think she's done well to get on the mountain bike and get used to being off-road, which is going to be much more useful for the race. So we'll have a quick look at the overall stuff. Look at the performance manager here. You can see that Karen's gradually building up her fitness here, building up her training stress score, which is a good indicator of the volume, and keeping it around 60 to 70 is going to be perfect. So basically there's a limit to how much you want to build your training stress, and in the summer it'll probably naturally build as you do some longer rides. If you look here, this is a chart that I quite like, is to look at the distance or the duration of the longest rides. So what you can see here is that Karen's nicely building up the longest rides that she's doing week over week, and that's what she'll need to do to meet her goal of firstly riding 400 miles in 4 days. She needs to be able to ride 100 miles in 1 day. So we'll have a look at the plan now. So to keep the same structure, I've copied last week's plan, or this week's plan, into next week. So I'm just going to plan 1 week this time, because if you're going to have an easier week, having an easy week this week to recover and let your body adapt and build fitness, because what happens is your body builds fitness during recoveries and not actually while you're training. When you're training, you get tired and you have to recover from that tiredness to let your body adapt. So what we should be aiming for is to get your training stress balance, your form value, round about 0 at the end of this week, so that you're ready for the next week of training. So what we're going to do is maintain some intensity but reduce the volume. So we'll look at this session first, the RPE session. And I've put the RPE values into the resources pages on the website, and also I've linked to an article, the Training Peaks article, that explains them in a bit more detail, and the physiological responses that you should be expecting from each training zone. And as you can see, it gives a description of what each training zone is, what the perceived exertion on the 1 to 10 scale is compared to each of the training zones, the power training zones and the heart rate training zones. And we'll use this equivalence from now on, and that's consistent with Training Peaks. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do less volume, and we're still going to do an interval session. So we want this session to be in the max aerobic zone, which is 6 to 7 RPE, and recoveries want to be very easy. And then what we're going to do is 2 sets of 4 by a minute, which is a nice session. It still has a good impact on your fitness, and also it'll won't be too damaging, so you'll still be able to recover. And there, that's it. So that's 2 by 4 by 1 minute. And then we just need to do the power one. What you need to do, like I said, is try and get the end of the week to be close to 0, so you can adjust these C rides. If you don't do the C rides, you want to adjust the other rides to end up on around 0 form at the end of the week. Make this shorter, but obviously if you're used to doing 6-hour rides, then a 3-hour ride is going to be an easy ride. If you're used to doing 2-hour rides, then you want to make it nearer that 1-hour ride duration. And there you have it. So that's an easier week, and that'll move you towards a recovered condition. Your body will build up stronger, and next week we'll be able to start another 2-week block of harder work. So don't be tempted to use the time, fill all your time with other things, because the recovery weeks are all about recovery. It's not just easier training or less training. You really need to be able to spend some time recovering. So if you're not training and you've got the time, then think about how best you can relax. Maybe do some meditation or some visualization or some yoga or something like that. So now we'll have a look at Karen's plan, and I can make some suggestions as to how I might play it if I was coaching Karen directly. Now, she's put here that she's possibly going to do a run or a mountain bike session after the event. Well, I probably wouldn't recommend a run, because it's probably not a good idea to do a run on very tired legs. Getting out on the bike is probably a good thing, get your legs moving, or go for a walk, but something very, very easy. I'd certainly leave the rest day here. If she wants to do something active like go for a walk or an easy bike ride, that'd be fine, but I wouldn't do anything hard, and I probably wouldn't go for a run. The interval session, I think I'd probably reduce that even more, given that she's had a big event at the weekend. So I might do 4 by a minute, so do the session but knock out one of the sets here. Easy ride, if she feels like it, that'll be fine. Just have to see how well she's recovering from the event, and at this point in time, it probably is okay to start running again. Probably do the tempo ride or a run. Running typically can be similar to tempo because it tends to be at a higher intensity than cycling. The endurance ride, see how she feels. There's not a big weekend coming up, so if she wants to ride every day, that's fine. Run or bike ride, whichever seems alright. I think if she did the run, because it's a bit shorter, I'd probably be tempted to make this ride a bit longer, just to maintain some volume. So at the end of the week, she's probably going to end up being reasonably close to 0, because bearing in mind that she isn't going to do both a run and a tempo ride when on the running days, and she's only going to do either the heart rate or the power based training sessions, and not both. So that's it for another week. Hope you enjoyed the video. and if you've got any comments, please let me know, and if you like these videos, then please subscribe, and I look forward to hearing from you, and